Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Take a moment as you're coming in and just take a breath. Get ready to be here with us this afternoon. I'm so excited to be here with you all. I'm Dr. Karen Parker. Take a second and just in the chat, open it up and say hello and tell us where you're from. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you here. We're going to be posting in the chat, if you didn't already get it, a copy of a worksheet to follow along while we go through the material for today. I want you to fill out the information in the worksheet if that resonates with you, because that helps you learn. It's hard when we learn on Zoom because it's a very monodimensional learning format, right? And research shows that we tend to either fall asleep or drift off, like we go into TV mode sometimes when we're learning on Zoom. So I put those, I created a worksheet for you so that you could follow along and fill out the questions and stay actively engaged in the learning. It is PDF fillable, so you can fill it out online. You don't have to print it. And let's get started. Is it up? Is it moving?
Yep, I can see it. Yes.
Yay, and it's moving. Okay, awesome. So I am Dr. Karen Parker. I'm the founder and creator of Quantum Human Design and the Quantum Alignment System. I am the author of multiple best-selling books, and I'm the world's top-selling human design author. I have a PhD in integrative medicine. I have been an emotional freedom techniques EFT practitioner since 2000. I've also studied several other energy psychology and energy healing methods. I've been a life coach since 1998, which is a long time ago now. I studied with and worked for Ra Uru Hu, the founder of traditional human design. I've been teaching human design since 1999. I'm a Quantum University guest lecturer, a TEDx presenter. I am the host of the Quantum Revolution podcast, and I am an Omega Institute, Shift Network, and Humanities Team faculty member. And mostly, I'm very excited to be here with you today. So, we're going to be talking in this time about human design and quantum human design. We're going to be talking about studying human design and quantum human design and why human design and quantum human design give us a framework that is very unique to the traditional human design format. And I'm going to explain to you why it matters that we add quantum human design, or the language of quantum human design, to our human design studies. We're going to talk about traditional human design and quantum human design and why you need to understand both, because one does not replace the other. They are both very important in the process of taking back control over your story. We're going to talk about the science of conditioning and deconditioning. And I'm going to talk a little bit about just some emerging research on the role of narrative and your personal story and how your personal story affects your life and your body. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Quantum Human Design Specialist Certification. I'm telling you now that I'm going to tell you about that so that you can relax and really enjoy the presentation, and know that my intention is to share information about this with you so that if you're really ready and you feel like this is an opportunity for you, that information is there. If you are brand new to human design, or you're just learning about quantum human design, there is still a bunch of information in this presentation for you today, and I don't want you to be stressed about, is she going to sell something? Is she not going to be selling something? I'm going to tell you up front, I'm going to tell you about an opportunity, and I will sell it to you if you want to use that word. And I also have a deep intention of giving you a lot of information to help you start thinking about your human design journey and looking at how you can tailor your journey in the way that works for you. So there's going to be information for you in this program, no matter what direction you end up deciding you need to go for yourself. I want to give you information today that's going to help you help yourself, your family, your clients, and ultimately can help you do your role in changing the world. So when I talk about this information today, and we talk about at the end the certification training, I also want you to know that don't get in your head and start thinking, oh, this is not for me because I'm not a coach. This is an in-depth training in human design. And so this training can be for people who want to learn quantum human design, for your friends, your family, and for fun. And this is also a training for anybody who wants to build or scale a quantum human design business or a coaching practice. And if you want to create even a side stream of income, this is a training for you. That's all I'm going to say about it for now. let's take a deep breath, because for many of you, as you come into your human design journey, and whether you've learned about human design from a book or from YouTube or from Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or wherever you may have learned about human design, you have probably been exposed to what is called traditional human design. In traditional human design, you've probably learned about the 5 types, and the language that we use around the 5 types are the manifestor, projector, reflector, manifesting generator, and generator. Human design, traditional human design, is an incredibly powerful tool to help you discover who you are and who you're not. Emphasis on the who you're not part. So what happens to most of us when we are born, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail later. When we are born, we begin to form an identity, a story that we tell ourselves in the world about who we are and how we are. Some of that story is already held within your body as a newborn baby from your ancestral lineage. We know now from research that on an epigenetic level, those are the protein codes that regulate how your DNA function. On an epigenetic level, we can carry up to 14 generations of memory on a cellular level within our bodies. And those are forming part of who we think we are. As we live and grow up in our families, we're imprinted by our families and how they behave and their beliefs and the things that happen to us. We're imprinted by our lived experiences. We're imprinted by our society and societal expectations or societal rules or even societal formulas about what we're told is successful or not successful, good or bad. We internalize all of these pieces, as well as our own unique way that we process the world energetically. That's your human design. We internalize all of this somewhat unconsciously. And so 95% of the story we tell about who we are and how we are, 95% of the story we tell about ourselves, subconsciously, unconsciously, is not necessarily the authentic story of who we really are. And for many of us, that has the source of dissonance in our lives. I would be curious to know in the chat, how many of you have felt like there's some untapped potential within you, and you know it's there. Excuse me, maybe you've even touched it a little bit. Maybe there's some part of you that is living some piece of it out, but you feel like, oh, there's more. Like there's more to me. Like I can feel it, I can sense it. It's kind of sometimes I like to call it, it's like your secret self. It's a part of you that maybe has a big dream. It's a part of you that maybe you don't share that big dream unless you're with people who you feel really safe with, right? And sometimes that big dream, that big self, that secret self is longing so badly to come out. And then we look at our regular life and there's dissonance there. And that dissonance sometimes shows up in ways that can feel oftentimes really painful or frustrating, or can cause us to be angry or bitter or even disappointed in our lives. These are the emotional themes for the types, right, in traditional human design. That dissonance can sometimes disrupt our money and the relationship we have with our money. It can disrupt our relationships with each other. It can disrupt our physical health and wellness. It can disrupt our careers and our career path, and even our relationship with source or spirit or God or whatever you want to use. Okay, traditional human design is a powerful tool that helps you learn to live true to who you really are. And one of the very first most important things that traditional human design teaches you is that your body, your physical body, is a compass. And that physical body, that compass, is going to tell you what is right for you and what isn't. We are designed to follow what feels good and right, which is hilarious to me because so much of my coaching that I do with my clients and my students is about getting them to trust that if it feels good, you should probably be following it, right? We are so trained towards martyrdom that we think there's something wrong with following the things that feel good. We think we're being wildly hedonistic instead of really actually trusting and dropping into that space where the body gives us those keys and clues to what feels right and what doesn't. So part of what traditional human design does is it gives you a prescription. It gives you a way of making decisions based on your type and your authority. And that way of making decisions based on your type and your authority is basically, how does it feel within your body? Getting you back into that space where you learn to trust that connection between yourself and your body's response, that visceral response to what feels good and right and what doesn't. That is an essential part of traditional human design. And by the way, if you are like brand new to human design and you have never studied anything about human design before, and you want to learn more about human design, Team Quantum is going to put in the chat for you a link to a program that we have, which is an introductory program. It's normally a $97 program. We're going to give you a discount so you can get it for $27. I'm going to put that in the chat for you. So if I'm talking over your head and you're like, I've never even heard of human design until this morning, then I want you to go take that class and still listen to what I have for you today, because I don't want you to miss out on some of the important details and I don't want to talk over your head. All right. So traditional human design gives you a prescription, that strategy and authority, that decision-making strategy and authority for your type and your authority based on how your chart is configured, and helps you drop back into the body so that you can feel what feels good and right for you. That's irreplaceable. That's irreplaceable. I could never teach any version of human design without teaching that information, because that's essential. And for most of us, when we're starting off, and we've got a lot of dissonance between our secret self inside of ourselves and our external self and the way in which our life looks, if there's a lot of dissonance, usually the very first thing we have to do is get back in touch with the body. And we have to rebuild our relationship with the body, because we probably have learned to shut it down so I don't say loudly, so effectively, right? That we can't hear it anymore, or we don't trust it. That's step one in traditional human design. When you have a big disconnect between who you really are and your authentic and your life, when that secret self just feels like it's lost and it's locked up in a box and there's no way out, the way in which we react to the world doesn't give us the option, or doesn't make us feel like we have a whole lot of choice. We feel like victims in our life. And in traditional human design, there is what's called a doctrine of no choice. A lot of people in traditional human design will talk about a phrase. They'll use a phrase, we have no choice. And I will tell you, in the traditional human design community, I'm a little bit of a renegade. I'm kind of a rule breaker. I'm actually designed to be a rule breaker. I'm a little bit of a rule breaker. And part of why I'm a rule breaker is, A, I'm a scientist, and B, this doctrine of no choice doesn't feel good in my body, because I have a deep connection and a really deep trust in my own body's response. And when I first started working with human design, working for Ra Uru Hu, I worked for Ra Uru Hu at Human Design America in the early 2000s. When I first started working with human design, every time people would talk about how you have no choice, you have to follow your design, my body would go, ugh, this doesn't feel right, right? I had this visceral response to it. And eventually in 2005, I left traditional human design because I didn't resonate with the idea of no choice. In fact, I personally felt like that was kind of a dangerous way to think about things. That if we had no choice, then where was our authority to make good and right decisions about what was good for us and what was ultimately also good for the people in the world around us? But that's me. That's me. And one of the things I want to really encourage you as you listen and learn today is, I want you, and I tell this to all my students too, I want you to study human design through many different teachers' lenses, because human design is not ever going to be about the teacher. My way of teaching human design is not about me, I mean, except the parts that are mine, right? It's about me giving you pieces of information that you might or might not relate to. And the purpose of human design is not to get you to follow me or anybody else. The purpose of human design is to get you to follow you, to get you reconnected with yourself and decide for yourself what feels right for you and what doesn't. And if you enter human design and you study human design and you listen to all the different human design teachers out there and you go, wow, this stuff is bunk, it does not feel right for me, and you're trusting your body's response to that, then it's right for you to not love human design. to not be called to learn human design or to study or to integrate it into your life. And I want to make sure that as we're talking today, you understand that if that's your response to human design, I fully and just completely support that for you. Because the purpose of human design is not to get you to follow any particular dogma, but for you to learn to follow yourself, to trust yourself, to love yourself, to value yourself, to stand in your own power, to be relentlessly authentic, to learn how to regulate and trust your own emotional response to life, to be decisive, to be courageous, and ultimately to tap into your vital life force energy in the way that's right for you. When I worked for Ra Uru in the beginning of human design, one of the things that he always said was that human design, as it's taught today in traditional human design, is not complete. He always talked about how one day he would go on to create a version of human design for what he would call the awakened person. But Ra passed in 2011 and never got to complete that part of the human design story. And so when he passed in 2011, literally days before my very first human design book came out, he died, which was really horrible timing. And let me just say, I have such deep love and respect for Ra and all the information he shared about human design. And when he died, it was a terrible loss. And to have my book come out a few days later was just, it was so awful. And it also put this call in my own heart that if he was not able to complete the journey of human design, then it was my job to do it. And I put it off for a couple of years. For a couple of years, I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. That's too big. It's too much. I don't know what I'm doing. But in 2013, I decided that I really needed to listen to my heart and trust my gut, my sacral. I'm a manifesting generator type, and do the work that I felt called to do to explore how do we evolve traditional human design. Now, my background has always been in healing. My first degree is in nursing. I was a nurse by training. I was a midwife for a couple of years. I've been an energy healer. I'm a coach. I've always been concerned with and obsessed with the question of how do we get people more whole, more aligned, more tapped into their brilliance as quickly as possible. And I love traditional human design because it is a great tool to start answering that question. But I started attracting towards the late 2000s, late 2008, 2009, 2010. I started attracting people into my practice who were people who I would consider to be highly evolved people who had done a lot of therapy, a lot of inner work, a lot of meditation, a lot of studying, a lot of shadow work. And a lot of people were coming to me and saying, I really love human design. I can see and feel that there's something in human design that is really valuable and really powerful, but I don't relate to the language. I don't relate to some of the ways that we talk about these parts of human design. And that also stuck in my mind. And so when I started exploring, what do we do to evolve the system? What came to me was that to evolve the system, we needed to find new vocabulary and we needed to move people past the strategy and the authority of the types. The strategy and authority, that decision-making thing that we do depending on our type, is essential. It's essential. It's healing. You have to rebuild your trust in your body's response to life. But once we know how our body responds to life, then what? Then what? Do we just sit around and wait for things to happen without any kind of autonomy or influence over our outer world? Again, my gut said, no, that's not right. I was trained in a spiritual tradition where we are collaborators or co-creators with Source. That we don't just sit and let life act upon us. We are intentionally harnessing life force energy and using it to create and build a good, beautiful world. And so the idea of simply waiting for life to happen and then deciding, is this good, is this not good, it didn't feel complete enough for me. And so as I began to dive deep and look at, well, what am I going to make this evolved version of human design be about? I started to think about how if human design, when we first start our human design journey, we enter it into the place where we're conditioned. In other words, we enter our human design story when we're either feeling burned out. If you're in chat, post that. If you entered your human design journey from a place of burnout, just say me in the chat. In my experience in working with my clients, especially in the beginning of my human design journey, most of my clients, if not all my clients, were burned out projectors. I almost did nothing but projector readings for years. And my projectors were hurting. Like they weren't just like, oh, I'm burned out, right? They were like on the couch, incapable of moving, right? And stuck and really struggling to figure out what's wrong with me. Generators burn out too, by the way, but generators don't burn out in the same way as projectors. For generator types, if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, often the way in which we burn out is we settle for mediocrity. We live a meh kind of life, right? So that might be something that you relate to as your entrance point into human design. Maybe you go to work and you come home and then you zone out, right? Netflix and dinner, or you do something to distract yourself from the discomfort of your frustration, right? And so that's also sometimes a way that we show up in our human design journey in the beginning. We call that expression your conditioned self. Your conditioned self is when you live an external world that's dissonant from your authentic self. When you are following societal and familial expectations and not really being true to yourself. So in traditional human design, we practice following strategy and authority, and then we eventually over time move ourselves back to baseline. That's that healed expression where we're back in touch with ourselves. We trust ourselves, we trust our intuition, we trust our body, we trust all the parts and pieces of who we are. But baseline isn't the end. That's the beginning, right? That's the beginning. We have to start from baseline to grow into the fulfilled potential. And so in 2013, when I started thinking about, okay, traditional human design, we need it. It's a healing prescription. It brings us back to baseline. What's next, right? What's next? And so the next piece was to evolve into that higher expression. So I took all of the vocabulary from traditional human design. I went into a cymatics lab, into a sound lab, and I began experimenting with all kinds of different new vocabulary words, different language, different ways to restate and reframe all the parts of traditional human design. And over the course of 2 years, I rewrote all of the language of traditional human design. I call it quantum language. It's high frequency language, deliberately chosen because of how it resonated in the lab. And using this language, we support clients with quantum human design in moving from baseline, that I'm back to being who I am, to fulfilling the full potential of that person you were born to be. That's the quantum expression. And so what we teach people with quantum human design is not only how do you heal that conditioned expression and bring yourself back to baseline, but how do you take yourself from baseline to quantum? How do you evolve the story of who you are, and how do you ultimately fulfill that higher purpose, that part of yourself that keeps calling you, inspiring you, pushing on you, telling you there's more, there's more. How do we bring that in, right? How do we bring that in and really live that and use that quantum language as a template to construct a field of information on the quantum level that allows us to step into and create ultimately our fulfilled potential? That is the difference between traditional human design and quantum human design, and really you need to know both. Because all of us, I wish we all lived on this little spectrum and I could say, yeah, I'm living over here in the quantum all the time, but I'm not. Sometimes I have some very conditioned moments. Sometimes I have to get myself back to baseline. That's life, right? That's being human. And, the push is to always get towards quantum. We really need to know all of it because it allows us to use our language and our self-awareness and the connection to our physical body as a compass to navigate the space between stimulus and response so that we are consciously choosing what we want to create, and ultimately also to help us co-create with the divine or source or quantum field or whatever you want to call it, co-create with our own innate creative power what it is that we really want to be living in our lives. So the problem with traditional human design just is that if we only teach traditional human design, the prescription of following type and strategy, right? was never designed to be a permanent lifestyle. It's a prescription for healing, or I like to say it's a prescription for holding. So, one of the things that I hear people talk about a lot, this is particularly true for you as projectors. My projectors, this is for you, but it's for all of us. What do you do if you're in the shower and you get a really good idea? And your whole body is like, yeah, this is it, right? How many of you have had that experience? I know I have had that experience. My sacral is like, yeah, that's a great idea. When you live at baseline long enough, with your traditional human design, when you are at baseline and you really trust your body and your body's response, and you have those downloads, I'll call them a download, right? Or you just know something is right for you. Maybe you have a dream. I've had that too. When you are in that baseline expression and you trust it and you know it, you don't have to wait for anything else outside of yourself to come towards you. You can trust your own ideas and inspirations because you've cleaned them up. In the process of deconditioning, getting yourself back to baseline, you've also stripped away a lot of those familial and societal expectations, those old beliefs. You decondition the cultural narrative and the norms that live inside of you, and you learn how to live following your own truth, your own path, and your own trajectory. And I had a lot of clients that coming to me saying, I trust myself. I don't feel like I have to wait. And for some people, if some people come to me in a reading and that's what they say first off the bat, I'm often a little bit suspicious because we sometimes want to skip steps, right? And I get that. I'm a manifesting generator. And at the same time, there comes a point in time where that connection between yourself, source God, quantum field, and your body is so in sync because you've become the person you were born to be. And there isn't confusion in that connection anymore. There isn't static in that phone line, if you will, to the divine. You get to a point where you can follow that inner flow and not just the outer flow. And that happens after you have healed, when you've hold yourself back into your original self, right? The other thing I just have to add is that one of the things that Ra taught was that the deconditioning process, moving from the shadow self to the baseline, takes 7 years. He said it takes 7 years of following your strategy and authority. And then in 7 years, if you followed your strategy authority, poof, you're deconditioned. Well, first of all, I don't think that's really true. I personally find that I am always having to uncondition my reconditioned conditioning. If I go out in the world, I'm going to get conditioned and I have to come back and realign myself perpetually. That's not scientific, but that's my own experience. But I will say that one of the things that Ross said is because this number of 7 years came from the idea that all the cells in the body replace themselves every 7 years. That is not actually true. And in fact, the cells that are essential to our identity, like heart cells and brain cells, there are certain heart cells and brain cells that never duplicate over the span of your entire life. We do not replace all of our cells over 7 years. We do replace some, but not all. And certainly not most of the cells in the heart and in the brain, which is where our primary identity live. And so there's no magic formula to deconditioning. There's no click your heels together, follow strategy authority for 7 years, and poof, you're deconditioned. It doesn't work that way, right? So what really works though is you have to do the work. You have to do the inner exploration as well as retraining that connection to the body. And you also have to look at what are my lived experiences? What's in my ancestral lineage? What is my nervous system saying? Why is my nervous system reacting this way? Is this mine? Is this a conditioned pattern? Where did this pattern come from? What did my parents do? What did my grandparents do? There's so much that goes into that deconditioning process, and there's no work around the work. And I'm sorry to tell you that. A lot of people are not going to tell you that. They're going to promise you a secret little pill that you can take, but there's no pill. We have to do the work. And it doesn't mean it's not fun. It doesn't mean it can't be creative. Doesn't mean it, there isn't a beautiful way to do it. But the deconditioning process does not happen magically. It happens with intention. It happens with a cosmic flashlight, sometimes going into the dark parts of yourself and really exploring how do we disrupt that old identity, that 95% of you that's stored up here in your subconscious that you didn't even get to decide you are. How do we get yourself out of this conditioned identity and back into this intentional cortical aspect of your true self? And that takes practice, and it takes a little bit of grit, and it takes a little bit of work, and it's worth it. is the most valuable journey you can take yourself on, because the other side of that journey is liberation. You will get yourself to a place where you write your own script, your own life, your own words, your own story. And then you get to decide what's right for you and not. And you get to act on that with great courage and confidence. All right, let's talk briefly about basic quantum creativity. How is it that we co-create with the quantum field? So I'm going to break down for you the essential parts of the creative equation, the parts that you are constantly calling on right now as you listen. You're creating from these parts. The very first part of the creative equation is called the quantum field, or we can call it the unmanifest reality. Right now, in this moment, as you are watching and listening to this presentation, you are sitting in a field of information, a field of information that is mostly not manifest. It's an infinite field. There are infinite potentials, infinite fields of information about who you could be or what you could be experiencing in your life. But it's not manifest yet. You've only manifested a handful of options while simultaneously sitting in an infinite number of infinite options, right? So there's this huge field of possibility that you're sitting in. That's pretty profound when you think about that. The second part of the creative equation is called the mental and the emotional body. This is what we call, or where we carry, our conditioning. This is the story you tell about who you are and how you are. And in this story, we hold our memories. We hold the emotional artifacts of all of our lived experiences. We hold our connection to the collective story matrix and everything we think is possible based on our collective experience of being a human. This is where we hold our familial expectations, societal expectations, our ancestral lineage, and your human design. So this is part of what makes your story your story. One of the things that we teach when we look at the more in-depth healing systems that we have within the quantum human design programs that we teach is that in addition to your story and the quantum field, you have an energy field, the subtle body. That energy field, sometimes called your aura, is holding your current life in place. So it is basically an energy template that is holding whatever's happening in your life right now in place. It also holds anything that you're about to manifest into your life or something you're in the process of discreating out of your life. So if you've ever gone to a good intuitive, or if you've ever gone to somebody who's really good at reading energy, they might be able to look at this part of yourself, your subtle body, and they might be able to see, oh, it looks like you had a cold last week. I can see a little, spot on your aura. Or they might look at your aura and go, ooh, looks like you're about to attract your soulmate, right? So we have an energy template here in the quantum alignment system, which I'm not going to talk about today, but that's an integrated approach to using quantum human design. We work with flower remedies and sound healing frequencies to tune the energy field to help you expedite the deconditioning process. The final part of the manifesting or the creative equation is your manifested in reality, your life right now. So your life right now is the physical manifested expression of a handful of options out of the quantum field. Another way of looking at this or seeing this is if you see this slide, you'll see the top of the slide is the quantum field. It's filled with all these infinite possibilities. The bottom of this slide is your life right now. Hopefully it looks like this. In the middle, you have this filter. And this filter includes your human design and everything that makes you think about who you are. Every part of your story about who you are is held within that filter. And basically that filter is looking at this field of infinite possibilities and it's choosing. It's choosing options out of this infinite field of possibilities that match your story. And when it chooses, those possibilities drop into, or quantum physicists say they collapse, which I don't like that word, but it collapse into your reality, right? You are the story that you tell about yourself. Okay? You are the story. Now, if we look at the quantum field of infinite possibilities through the lens of quantum physicists know that quantum particles we can either measure the movement of a quantum particle. This is a representation of the movement of a quantum particle. They move in waves. Or we can measure the location of a quantum particle. These are the tiny little building blocks of matter. But we can't measure the movement and the location at the same time. We can only measure movement or location, but never both at the same time. If a quantum physicist has an expectation about where a quantum particle is going to show up, that's where it shows up. And it stops moving. It locates, right? It stops moving, it drops out of movement, and it locates itself, right? So that's a very interesting dilemma, right? So you can only measure the movement or the location of quantum particles, but not both at the same time. Movement, that infinite field of potential is filled of zipping, moving quantum particles. So movement of a quantum particle is pure potential. Location is manifestation. By the way, fun fact, quantum physicists just discovered that they can now understand how when we affect some kind of impact on a quantum particle in present time, it actually changes the past. So I have always said in all of the healing work that I've ever done and trained people to do that we heal in all directions of time. I think it's very interesting that quantum physicists are starting to verify that we now actually literally can change all directions of time. So movement is pure potential. Location is manifestation. And the meanings we have, or the expectations we have, which by the way are held in our stories, determine what we manifest. Meaning, the meanings that we have, or the expectations that we have, are determined by our conditioning field. That's the mental and the emotional body. That's where you store all the information that makes you who you think you are. And if you want to create a different state of well-being in your life, you have to change the meanings that you have. You have to change your expectations. Well, what does that mean? Our perception of the world determines what we create. In other words, our perception affects the potentials that we activate in the quantum field or collapse out of the quantum field. So let's do a little exercise here. Take a minute and just look at this slide. And on this slide is the word serve. Serve. And I would like for you to just take a moment in the chat and write down, when you see the word serve, what comes to mind? What thoughts come to mind? Love. That's a good one. Love. Help, joy, sacred, purpose, caring, love, vibration, no payment. Purpose, reciprocity, healing, Jesus, giving time, gratitude, abundance, helping, providing a service, guidance, sharing, oneness, creating. You guys have good meanings about this. I like this. I like this. Slavery. Okay. Thank you. Minister, sharing. I appreciate whoever posted slavery. I really appreciate that, because this word is actually a pretty charged word. Duty, heaviness, obligation. Sometimes martyrdom is in here. Exhaustion. That's a good one. Sacrifice, heart, love. Now, when you read all these different words, all these different thoughts that come up in relation to the word serve just means to give somebody something, right? That's not the dictionary translation. That's just me, right? But yet you all have all these different meanings associated with this word. Let's talk about what just happened here. You saw the word serve and it started a storm of light, a photon storm in your brain. That storm of light caused you to produce neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are a physical, measurable phenomenon. I can take you into the lab and we can measure neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters in turn caused you to produce a specific emotional response. And that emotional response was an emotional response that matched the meanings that you have around the word serve. So if you saw the word serve and maybe it triggered something in you, maybe you're exhausted, maybe you're burned out, maybe you've overserved in your life, and you saw the word serve, your body produced neurotransmitters that created an emotional response that matched that story. If you have a beautiful meaning about serve, and that's something that you have worked through and you've really explored, how do I serve in a sustainable and a healthy way? How do I serve in a way that allows me to be abundant and also to give and create more abundance? And if that's the meaning that you have around the word serve, then your brain produced neurotransmitters that created a positive emotion around that based on your meanings. The emotions that get generated either create a state of coherence, which is a highly created state rooted in the heart, or it creates a state of non-coherence, which is a state of low-grade fight or flight. If we want to change our experience of the world, we have to heal the stories that we have. We have to heal the meanings that we have about the world, which is what we use human design to do, right? So photons are part of our creative medium. What inspires the movement of the photons in the first place? Your story. Your story. Your story is literally creating your body's response to the world. It's literally creating a state of coherence or non-coherence based on the meanings that you have. So to create the reality you want to be experiencing, you have to tell a story that matches what you want. And of course, if your story is creating your reality, if you are creating your reality, it's what we say, right? I create my own reality. Then you have to ask, who is the you that's creating your reality? That is the most important question we can be asking, because if the story that we're telling about who we are isn't a story of our own choosing, and we're telling a story that somebody else gave us, or life gave us, or our ancestors gave us, and it's not actually our story, we're living out a dissonant story, and we can't sustain dissonant stories over time, right? We can't sustain dissonant stories over time. Eventually, the body starts to scream, or our life starts to manifest disruption because our higher self is like, no, that's not the right story. Stop it, right? We have to also know what story we're telling about not only who we are, but how we are, because we're all hardwired differently. And when we're hardwired differently, there's no formula that works for any single one of us. And if we're telling a story about how we are that doesn't actually fit how we are, if we're not designed to work sustainably, if we're not designed to organize details, if we're designed to start but not finish, or finish but not start, if we're working against our own innate design and we're not being honest about how we are, or we don't know how we are, and we're telling a story about how we are that doesn't fit, that's a fast track to burnout. Okay. And then do you like the story you're telling? Are you telling a story that's true, that's good, that really is aligned with the magnificence and the brilliance, not the Brazilians, although I really love Brazil, right? Is the story you're telling really one that reflects your magnificence back to you? Is it worthy of you? So one of the other things that we talk about in traditional human design that, again, I had a really big physical sacral response to. And again, I want to really stress, I'm not saying my way versus traditional human design. I'm saying this is my journey, my story. And if you resonate with it, yes. If you don't resonate with it, yes. There's no right or wrong here. There's just different paths. Traditional human design teaches that there's basically one kind of conditioning. And that conditioning comes from anything in your chart that's open. So if you look at your human design chart and you look at your chart, you'll see that there are white parts on your chart. We all have different white parts. We all have different degrees or amounts of white parts. Those white parts in your chart are where you experience the world from outside of yourself. Those are essences of how you work with energy in your relationship. Okay, so if you have openness wherever you have openness, that's where you take energy in your relationships. It's also because wherever you have openness, you experience energy in this amplified way. It's also where, in that amplified experience of that energy, you sometimes get your own energy field hijacked. We sometimes mistakenly believe that we are something or experiencing an energy that's not actually ours. We're taking it in from the world around us, and it causes us to get confused about who we are and how we are. Science shows, well, first of all, science doesn't really study this energy that way yet. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. But science also shows there's a lot more to the conditioning process than just how you experience energy in the world. And one of the things that was always important to me to address as a scientist and as a coach and as a nurse is that when we talk about conditioning, we can't only talk about openness by center in your human design chart. We also have to look at other core areas where our identity is formed, how our identity is formed. So our identity is also formed by imprinting. We are imprinted by our family of origin. We are imprinted by the families we grow up in, and the way in which they behaved and how they responded to life is encoded within us and oftentimes within our identity. We know from human design that you actually inherit your design from your grandparents, which is like crazy, right? And your children, if you are fortunate enough to have children, your children inherit their design from your parents. So you can see that there's a very interesting generational pattern built into human design. But we also know from research that there are generational energy patterns that go into family systems that often get duplicated in multi-generational levels. We also now know that part of your personality or who you think you are comes from your genetics, including the ways in which you react to life sometimes is influenced by your ancestral lineage. And of course, your lived experiences have a lot to do with who you think you are. Here's the deal. We talked about no choice, right? That traditional human design often talks about we have no choice. If we are living our conditioned self, we don't have choice. We're reacting to life. We're living out patterns, and sometimes they're not even our own patterns again and again and again. Once we decondition, meaning once we reclaim our authentic identity, once we get back to baseline, then we have infinite choice. Then we have the ability to engineer our lives in a way in which we desire. And let me tell you something, when you get back to baseline, the life you want to create for yourself, it's not some crazy power monger, life. You just want to create the life that's yours to live, because that is the most delicious, exciting, fulfilling, satisfying, beautiful thing. Sometimes we get afraid, like, well, what if I get back to baseline and I'm like some evil monster? You won't be. You won't be. You'll just be you. And that's a beautiful, beautiful, powerful thing. So when we talk about quantum human design, which is the expanded version of traditional human design, is a way of cataloging the story you're telling. It gives us a very concrete, tangible way to change our personal narrative. It gives us a database of the parts of the story. It shows you your life and your soul curriculum, and it gives you a unique path to optimizing your life. So when we use quantum human design, what I actually teach you in my programs, how to get in here into this filter, this place where your story lives, and how to intentionally and consciously take back control over that story to become the person you were born to be, the person you choose to be. So human design is a synthesis of Eastern and Western astrology, the Hindu chakra system, Judaic Kabbalah, Chinese I Ching, and quantum physics. Well, what do all these systems have in common? These are all archetype-based systems, right? It's an archetype-based system. And an archetype is just an idea, a symbol, a pattern, or a character type in a story. And archetypes, by the way, are inherently neutral until we give them meaning. A server is neutral until we give it a meaning, right? Until we call it a waitress, right? Or we call it a part of a computer, right? We are each living our own personal story. Your chart is just comprised of the archetypes in your chart, right? Your chart, that's all it is. An archetype is neutral until we give it a meaning. And for most of us, when we come into our human design journey, we're giving the meanings of our chart negative definitions, right? We're giving them limited definitions. Once we follow strategy and authority, we bring ourselves back to baseline, we start to shift the meanings of the parts of our chart. With quantum human design, we learn to consciously start to choose the higher expression of those archetypes, to go from being a victim in the story to becoming the victor of the story, to go from feeling like you have no control over the story to being sovereign over the story. Does that mean you get to be in charge of every single thing that happens in your life? No, not necessarily. Stuff's still going to happen, but you will be in charge of how you respond to it. You will be in charge of your story. And in fact, research shows that when we take back control over that story, particularly using the hero's journey process, it makes us capable of greater equanimity, meaning we can stay balanced in the center of a storm, no problem. And it makes us more resilient. It gives our life more meaning and more purpose. And it makes us healthier. We can have healthier telomeres at the end of our genes so that longevity and wellness goes up. It increases our immune function, causes your blood pressure to stay stable, right? We are happiest and most abundant and magical in our current awareness when we are creating in alignment with the highest expression of the archetypes in the chart. You have to know who you're designed to be and the parts of your soul curriculum in order to know how you create what you truly want. You have to take back control over the story. So when we're working with ourselves or our family members or our loved ones, or when we're working with clients, if you're a coach or you are doing something where you're working with people, what problems do people have that keep them from reclaiming their power and cultivating their well-being in every area of their life? Well, there's a couple of problems that we confront. Number one, and you might relate to this question, how do I truly know who I am? The first thing you have to do is you have to understand how you're conditioning. What has conditioned you? What caused you to have this identity already? And you have to learn how to stay connected to your authentic self, no matter what's going on around you. This is really the part where strategy and authority, that traditional part of human design, is so essential, because following strategy and authority gets us back reconnected to knowing who we are, to remembering what it feels like in the body. In problem number two is, how do I make effective decisions? Like, how do I choose, right? Traditional human design teaches us how to remember and trust the body's authority, living our strategy for our type until we can deepen that connection and get back to baseline. Problem number three, especially when we're trained as coaches, we have a tendency to be trained in one-size-fits-all approaches to coaching or creating success. When you use human design, or when you add human design to your coaching practice, you help your client discover their unique way of creating so that they create with their energy and not against it. And problem number four, how do I know my gifts and how do I strengthen them? And of course, quantum human design, that other side of the chart, is a powerful way to help your clients define and reclaim their natural gifts so they can truly fulfill their potential. Why are these big problems? They're big problems because if you don't know how to do this for yourself or for your clients, you're going to run the risk of staying stuck or locked in an inauthentic identity, inauthentic energy, and you're going to be vulnerable to either helping your clients unconsciously continue to create boom and bust cycles in energy, causing them to second guess themselves and not really tap into that potential, and really inadvertently stay stuck in a cycle of starting, making a little bit of progress and getting stuck, starting and making a little bit of progress and getting stuck. If you don't liberate the true self, if you don't explode and explore and untangle from conditioning, if you don't help your clients find their unique formula and definition of success, and instead try to follow a very formulaic approach, you're not really going to get them off the mark. You're not going to really get them into that deconditioned baseline place where they can discover for themselves, who are you? Who are you really? This is what you learn to do as a quantum human design specialist. So if you are interested in learning how to implement what we've talked about today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our quantum human design specialist training. In this training, we've got 4 levels of certification. So we have level 1 through 4, levels 1 through 4. It's an online self-paced learning program. So if you are you've got a busy life, you're doing something on the side, if you're a parent at home with kids, I understand that sometimes you don't have the ability to always be in a call live or in some specific training. So I created this program so that there's a lot of flexibility in self-paced learning. We have included in our training not only the self-paced learning component, but live forums and an online community. So once a week, you have the opportunity to meet with me personally and bring any questions that you might have from your self-paced learning to our live forum. We vary the times of forums. So we have most of our forums, the first few forums are at noon on Mondays during the week. It's the central time. But we also once a month have an evening forum for those of you who are in countries where the time zones don't match up, or if you work during the day, you'll have the opportunity to come to forums at night. If you can never attend a forum live for some reason, you can also pre-submit any questions that you might have, and we post the replays of our forums, so you always have live support. We also have once a month, a monthly chart chat live where you actually get to come and practice chart reading with your cohort students and with Hannah, our member of our team Quantum. So there's a lot of ways for you to learn here. You can learn on your own and get the live support because it's not fun if you have a question, you can't get a live answer. Get the support that you need. Part of what you're going to learn is I'm going to teach you how to use this narrative path as part of your training in quantum human design. So you're going to learn how to read a chart, how to read all the parts of the chart, and I'm going to teach you how to interpret the parts of the chart as part of a story so that you're ultimately going to be giving your clients their own kind of hero's journey so that they can go on a quest to recover their authentic self, learn what are their potential sacred flaws in the configuration of their chart, learn how to work with those flaws so that they emerge from that quest as the hero or the shero in their story. So that you're not only going to be helping your clients tailor tailor their life and how they create their life in a way that works for them, you're also going to give them power back over their stories. You're going to teach them how to take back control over their stories so they get to tell the story of their own choosing. They get to create a life that is in alignment with their authentic self so they can bust free from that weird feeling of like, there's more for me here, but I don't know what it is. They actually tap into that and bring it into life. As my way of thanking you for being here today and listening to me today, I'm going to give you 22% off the tuition for all of the quantum human design trainings, the quantum human design professional training. So I'm putting quantum human design levels 1 and 2 on sale. Or if you're like, I'm ready, I'm going to do the whole thing, then Quantum Human Designs level 1 through 4 will also be on sale for 22% off. We've got a coupon code for you. Team Quantum, Hannah and Tara are posting, will post in the chat a link plus the coupon code. So keep that close. This is good until September 4th at midnight. So you have until September 4th at midnight to take advantage of the 22% off. And I just want to end with a reminder. The highest expression of humankind, so if we look at the human design chart, it's a map. It's a map that tells you not only your potential, but if we look at it in general, it's a map that tells us the human potential. And when we look at the human potential, the potential of the human story, which is something I feel like we all need to be tapping into right now, the highest potential of humankind is the full engagement in life that allows us to evolve by learning and leaving the past behind, by consciously and consistently expressing our potential and making our unique contribution to the world, by taking our direction from spirit, by being physically vital, having all the resources we need to fulfill our destiny, and taking actions that are only good for the greater good of the world. We need that right now. We need that right now. And I think now more than anything in the world, we need guides like you, people who have the skill set to know how to lead people into the recovery of the authentic self so that we can all live true to who we are. We can all stand in our value and see our own value and naturally also see the value of each other because we literally are who we are because of each other. And if we want to change the world, we have to be changing it from an intentional place. We can no longer be reacting from these old conditioned patterns. They're not working. We've outgrown them. And it's time for a new story. It's time for us to really fulfill the highest expression of being human. So in other words, we're designed to feel good being who we are and doing what we came here to do. And we're also designed to be nice to each other. So let's do that. All right. Be yourself, the real you. You are the greatest gift that you can give the world. And being a quantum human design specialist can help people remember their greatest gift. Not only that, if you do that, you do your part to heal the world. So thank you. All right. I appreciate you all hanging in here with me. Let's take a couple of questions. Those are, Angela, those are the identity gates center, the gates in the identity center. So, hi, Hannah.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just wanting to get some of your questions addressed here. Okay. First question, do manifestors get burned out?
Oh, yeah. Everybody gets burned out. Everybody gets burned out. In fact, burnout is such a big problem. Literally, the World Health Organization has called it an official medical diagnosis. The problem is that the World Health Organization defines burnout as coming from your work situation. And I'm going to say that any of us that are living untrue to our authentic self across the board, all types, it takes a lot of energy to be something you're not. It takes a lot of energy to be someone that you're not. And anytime you say yes to something you want to say no to, anytime you say no to something you want to say yes to, you're wasting energy, you're losing energy, and you totally will burn out. So yes, everybody can burn out, all types, even reflectors.
Yes. And next question, will I learn about my own chart in training, or is it something that I need to do separately?
Oh, you absolutely will learn about your info. In fact, that's the most important piece because here's what happens. When you become authentic, when you start to live out your true self, you actually shift your vibration. You become high frequency. And if we go back to traditional physics, not quantum physics, just real physics, physical physics, we know that high vibrations lift lower vibrations up. The opposite is not true. Low vibrations cannot bring high vibrations down. I mean, you can't do that in a lab, right? So it's imperative in the process that you learn about your chart first, because when you live true to yourself and you learn about yourself and you decondition yourself, and then you go do a reading, when you're in that high frequency place, you're creating this beautiful energetic runway for your clients. You're creating this whole space that lifts them up, that makes their own transformation that much more accessible.
Okay, next question. Let's see. Can you explain the benefit of doing all four levels and what comes with each level?
Sure. So every level is broken down into a deep study into the different parts of the chart. So level one is all about type, strategy, and authority. In level two, we talk about the profile lines, the profiles, and the centers. In quantum human design level three, we talk about channels and gates. That's the thing that everybody wants to do. That's the sexy part of human design, right? And then in level four is really powerful. Level four is actually taught live. That's the one part where you do have some self-study pieces, but level four is also kind of a practicum. And in level four, I will teach you how to look at a chart and address the specific questions that your clients have. So in level four, we talk about human design and money, human design and relationships, human design and health, human design and life purpose, human design and career, those kinds of questions. So you really get to practice putting all those parts together into the whole story that the chart tells. I mean, I broke the training down into pieces, 4 layers, for a couple of different reasons. The first reason was, in all honesty, Hannah, when I first started teaching human design, I was really, really, really struggling with money. And I felt so guilty charging for the whole thing. I wanted to make it accessible for people to be able to get in on the front end and start learning, because I knew that if they could start learning, that would start to shift how they experience life and would help them create a more stable foundation from which to learn more human design, which is how that worked for me personally. And then over the years, it just became easier. It just became part of, let's teach us in 4 sections. It gives people time to integrate. It gives people time to step into it. In my perfect world, everybody should start with all 4 levels, because if you don't get to that 4th level where we really do the art of chart reading, where we do the synthesis of all the parts and look at how do all the parts play together in telling the story, you'll learn how to do human design. You'll learn about human design. You're certainly going to be able to do readings after level 1, but that extra ability to artfully synthesize the chart and the story of the chart really allows you to serve your clients at the highest level. Yeah.
Okay, next question. How do I know if I'm at the baseline frequency? Or what
I
does
would,
it mean or how do we know if we're there? Yeah.
yeah, and that's a great question. And I would say sometimes we're there, sometimes we're not, sometimes we're quantum. Okay, so let's be really give ourselves a lot of grace that sometimes you just have a hard day or a hard season, or you're going through a growth season, and sometimes we have to play with it. But I would say baseline, you're going to consistently be in a place where you're going to recognize old patterns. You will be able to consciously say, oh, that's an old pattern. Even sometimes in retrospect, you'll be, that was an old pattern. But you'll be able to, when you confront an old pattern, feel in your body, oh, that doesn't feel right, and be able to make a different choice relatively consistently. Again, if you're hungry, you're angry, you're lonely, you're tired, you're stressed, you had a bad day, you won't always be at baseline. I'm not always at baseline. You should have been in my house last Friday. I was not at baseline. But most of the time, you're going to be at baseline and you're going to feel and trust yourself and your own ability to make good decisions.
Okay, next question. If I've already studied traditional human design, will this be very different for me, or am I going to be kind of relearning what I know?
It will be very different for you. You will certainly cover aspects of traditional human design. You will hear me talk about traditional human design in a little bit of a different way than a lot of other people teach about traditional human design. And you're going to learn about quantum human design. I, I, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this with great love and respect for all the different human design teachers out there. I think one of the things that makes this training different is that I use human design as a tool for helping you tap into potential, meaning helping you learn how to activate that potential rather than using it as a labeling system. I am seeing, as I see human design sort of really get a lot of traction out in the world, which is cool and very exciting. I feel like there's a little bit of a shadow or a little bit of a dark side of traditional human design. And that is, it's very easy to use it as a labeling system. And we start to use it as a labeling system, it starts to become a different way that we put ourselves in a different kind of a box, right? It becomes a place where we start talking about ourselves as, well, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I'm a projector, reflector, or whatever. And that's not really what human design is about. It's not about what you are, it's about how you are and reclaiming your understanding of how you choose. But everybody has the same degree of choices. Everybody has the ability to create the same degree of success. There's like no type that's designed to be more powerful or less powerful than other types. There's no type that's designed to be in charge and everybody else isn't. It doesn't work that way. It's about reclaiming your own decision-making capacity, rebuilding your trust in yourself, and learning how to tap into your potential and actually activate it in the world. That's a how, not a what. And you get to decide what the what is.
Love that. Okay, what can I do with my certification? Um, yeah, why don't we just go into that a little bit, Karen?
I'm not sure I understand the
I
question.
know that was vague. Sorry, like what services or what can I offer? What can I do with this type of
Six Flags. So there's a lot of different things you can do with your certificate. You can give readings. I'm pretty liberal with how I really support my students in using the material that they use. So you can create workshops, you can create trainings. We actually teach you some marketing, and we have a whole separate program where if you want to do this as a business, we'll teach you how to get your website up. We'll teach you how to market. You can do human design parties. You can do lectures at expos. You can do booths at expos. There's all kinds of different things you can do with your training. Even as a level one human design specialist, quantum human design specialist, you can do readings. You can integrate it into your coaching. You can write books. I'm not going to pull it off my shelf because the stack has gotten so big, but if you can see like these books right here on this section of the shelf, it's all books that my students have written, that I've written the forewords to. So you can write books. So all kinds of different things you can do with human design as a specialization and a certificate. I think the other thing I just want to say, when you become certified, we really want you to be successful. So one of the other things that we've done is we actually have, if you go to our quantumhumandesign.com page, you'll see a page that has all the practitioners listed there. So if you want to go find a practitioner, if you're a practitioner, you get a listing there. I actually had a student this morning who was talking about a reading that she did, she got from somebody in Saudi Arabia, and she was super excited because she'd always wanted to do a reading with an international person. So she was really excited. So,
Okay, I am an alchemist generator. Can you explain the difference between the alchemist and the generator part?
so the generator is the baseline. So in quantum human design, think of it like this. I have to back up for a minute and talk about butterflies. So when we talk about butterflies, butterflies have different life cycles, right? Or seasons. We start off as a caterpillar, then we go to the cocoon, and then we call, then you become a butterfly. We don't call a caterpillar a butterfly, even though technically it has the potential to be a butterfly, right? But it has a different name. So one of the things that I did with the language of traditional human design, when I added the quantum language, is I started to really look at it as sort of like the life cycle of a butterfly, right? We start off in our journey, we're over here like the caterpillar in our conditioned state oozing around, right? Then we go through this healing cycle, the cocoon, right? And that's where we become the baseline. So the generator is the baseline expression of that type, right? And then as you go through that evolution and you tap into the fulfillment of your higher purpose and your higher essence, then you evolve from the cocoon or from the generator into the butterfly phase or the alchemist phase. And when you live as an alchemist, you have a little bit of a different purpose than the pure generator. And that purpose, the purpose of all the 5 types in that evolved expression is not just about yourself, it's also about what you're here to give the world.
Okay, I'm a 3-5 manifesting generator with all centers defined. Does that mean I'm not influenced by external factors very much? It's hard to find info.
So you still have openness on your chart. It's just not going to be in your centers. So if you look at your chart, you'll see that there are lines, channels that are open. So you're still getting influenced by people around you. But as what we call you a 9 and O manifesting generator. As a 9 and O, you're here to impact people deeply. That doesn't mean you don't have choice, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't evolve yourself, because obviously part of what you want to think about is, I am a person, if I was you, you would be saying to yourself, I'm a person who has deep impact on others. I have a responsibility to make sure that how I'm impacting them is the way in which I want to impact them. And so your inner journey is really about looking at the archetypes in your chart and consciously choosing the high expression so you can become this powerful, influential force that you're designed to be.
Okay, is there a way to use this system to help people with cognitive challenges?
Yes, I have not done that. I have some students that have. I certainly would say you'd probably want to maybe tailor some of the language again. We have had it depends, obviously it depends on what some of the cognitive challenges are. We have had students that have written children's books that specialize in teaching human design to children. I know that's not the same thing, but there's certainly, I think, a lot of room in the human design community for somebody to talk about cognitive challenges or cognitive differences through a different lens and with human design vocabulary. Yes.
Let's see here. A sacral authority 5-1 generator. How do I tell the right or wrong for me while being a triple split?
Drop the whole story about being a split. That's the first thing I would tell you to do. Trust that the universe is going to bring you the people you need to bridge your splits, and don't get up in your head about splits. Splits is a thing that people talk about a lot, and there's a lot of conversation about splits and a lot of, I think, mythology about splits being hard. If you have splits in your chart, it basically just means you're a people who needs people. And your lessons in life are probably going to come mostly through your relationships. And so, what I would say for you is your number one job in the deconditioning process is to heal your self worth so that you enter into relationships that are going to reflect your value back to you. And those relationships will bring you exactly the energy you need to fulfill your relationship agenda, your purpose in the world that you'll be living out through leadership or through community or through relationship.
Okay, next question. How is this different to the Gene Keys methodology?
I have no idea. And the reason why I have no idea is because a long time ago, my guides told me to not study any other human design. So I've never, when my book came out, I think it was the third human design book that came out. I think Chetan Parton's book had come out and Linda Bonnell's book had come out. And I wanted to read them, and my guides just said, nope, you cannot read any more. You can't read any human design. You can't read any gene keys. And I'm really grateful for that in hindsight, because I feel really confident that what I teach is mine. And I love because I've had Richard on my podcast. I've talked to Richard Rudd several times over the years and been at talks and different conferences with Richard. He's an amazing, beautiful, beautiful soul. I love him dearly. And I love that we seem to be on the same wavelength, but we have a very different approach. And that's all I can tell you. I couldn't tell you anything about Richard's work except that he's really amazing and I love him.
Okay, is it okay if I take this training and if I don't have a business or if I just want to do it for my own personal development?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the best reason to take it, I think. So.
Okay, I'm just looking here. I know we're getting closer to time. Okay, do you ever go away from type? I feel like I'm a projecting generator, orchestrating alchemist. I only have two channels, one connecting the sacral and jade and another throat to ajna.
So I'm going to say something that might make a wave in the field here. I'm going to say that your type is your preferred way of interfacing with the world. But we're really, even the 5 types are archetypes, right? They're just archetypes. And to a certain degree, all of those archetypes live within us. They're all part of the human story. And so the more you know yourself, the more you bring yourself back to baseline, especially when you have a lot of openness, the more you're going to start to feel like there are certain times when you are drawing on the energy of the other types. It's not your energy to hold permanently. You're not going to sustain that energy, but you can borrow it, provided you know that's what you're doing, provided you have the awareness and you've been at baseline long enough to be able to say, oh, I get this part of myself. And in this moment, this is what I feel like my body feels like, how I should respond.
Okay. I feel like that's it for our questions for today. Is there anything you just want to wrap us up with, Karen?
You know, I haven't done this in a while, but I think I'm going to wrap us up in my old traditional way. And it goes kind of like this. I have I have 8 children. Growing when I was raising my family, we always had dogs and cats. And I have kids that love puzzles. I don't love puzzles. I hate puzzles. I think that, I don't know, I can't stand sitting still that long. But in our family, we always had puzzles. And the kids would pull out the puzzles and put the puzzles out on the dining room table or on the coffee table. And it didn't take very long for the puzzle pieces to get scattered. I had one son, a manifesting generator, who would like rip off parts of the puzzle pieces to try to jam them in the wrong place because he didn't like puzzles either, right? And really, when you look at a puzzle, you put all those pieces together, you know, the beauty of the puzzle comes from the sum total of all the pieces. And if you have a piece that's been jammed into the wrong place, or you have a piece that's missing because the dog ate it, it affects the entire face of the puzzle. Humanity is like that puzzle, right? Each and every one of us has our unique and vital and irreplaceable part of the puzzle. And when we try to tear off parts of ourselves and jam ourselves into a place where we don't fit in the puzzle, or God forbid, we just go completely missing off the puzzle board, right? We're not even in the puzzle anymore. We think, oh, who am I? Who am I to affect the puzzle? Well, you might be the essential piece that makes the puzzle the most beautiful that it's ever been. We each have our own place. We each have our own piece of the puzzle. Your greatest gift to the world is your ability to fill that piece as fully and as beautifully as you can, because when you do that, you change the world. Not only your world, not only your family's world, maybe in all directions of time, you change the entire world. Be your piece in the puzzle because the world needs you to be that more than anything, I think, right now at this time. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you, Hannah, for managing all the questions. Thank you, Team Quantum, for taking such good care of everybody in the chat. Again, 22% off the Quantum Human Design professional trainings. Get the link, get the coupon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for being you. And we'll see you soon. Bye.